Chapter 7. A New Roommate. Every Saturday, we had to clean the house from top to bottom. It wasn't my favorite thing to do, but it wasn't so bad either. Not since Jude and I got a record player last Christmas. Now, every Saturday morning, we put on our latest album and sing along. This week, it was South Pacific. I like singing. The songs gives you the words, so you don't have to think about what to say. Sometimes I dream about being in the church choir, but that involves getting up and standing in front of a group of people, which is not something I like to do. Every time I thought about how I had agreed to talk during a presentation, I felt sick. Even reciting prime numbers didn't calm me down. I hadn't even told Judy about it yet, since I'd already decided 20 times to tell Liz no on Monday. Oh, but then I'd think of that math book and change my mind again, especially since last year I'd spent a week building up my courage to ask the librarian for a book on magic squares. And when I did, she said they didn't carry books on witchcraft. "Mother," Judy said, bringing me back to the world of scrubbing tubs and toilets, "is it okay if I move into David's room?" What? David might be at college, but that didn't mean he wasn't ever coming back, did it? "I asked him before he left, and he said he didn't mind," said Judy. "I mind, but I didn't say it. I just scrubbed harder." Mother stopped shining the mirror over the sink. "What about when he comes home for the holidays, Christmas and spring break?" "I'll just move back in with Marley then. She can have the double bed. I'm happy with the twin." "Oh, all right then." Mother went back to work. "No," I said. "I don't want you to go." Judy laughed. "Marley, I'm not going anywhere, just down the hall." "You'll love having some space to yourself," said Mother. "You'll see." I knew she was wrong. As soon as we were finished with our chores, Judy moved into David's old room. We'd shared a room my entire life, and it only took her half an hour to disappear. That night, it was as quiet as a graveyard in my room. Even the roaring of the lions couldn't break the silence. I missed the sound of Judy breathing, the squeak of the bed as she rolled over, even the ticking of her alarm clock. Finally, I took my blanket and snuck down the hall into my brother's old room. The moon shone in the window, and I could just make out Judy asleep on the bed. I crept inside and curled up on the floor. It was hard and uncomfortable, but I fell asleep easily listening to Judy's quiet snoring. "Marley!" I woke up to Judy staring at me. The sun was shining in the window. "Why are you sleeping on the floor?" she demanded. I shrugged. "Marley, I changed rooms because I wanted to be alone. Tonight, make sure you stay in your own bed." Judy stepped over me and marched off to the bathroom. I picked up my blanket and went back to my room. My sister, the one I could always talk to, didn't want me around anymore. I didn't know what I was going to do. Sally wasn't pleased either, not when Liz told her we were working together. "But Marley always works with me," she said. "I'm right here," I wanted to yell. "I can hear what you are saying about me." "Well, you are so nice," said Liz smoothly, "to make sure a new girl like me doesn't have to work alone." Sally opened her mouth, then closed it again. "I'll work with you, Sally," said Nora. Sally shrugged, and Nora beamed. What I wouldn't give to be like Liz, to be the one who could make Sally speechless. That afternoon, when I got home from school, Betty Jean was in the kitchen making sweet tea. Everyone has their own recipe, but Betty Jean makes it by boiling water in a saucepan on the stove. She adds in a pinch of baking soda, and then when the water's boiling, puts in the tea bags, all tied together. Once it's dark enough, she pours it into a pitcher and adds a cup of simple syrup. She stirs, adds enough water to fill the pitcher to the top, and stirs again. Betty Jean was just getting ready to put it into the fridge when she realized I was watching her. "Oh, Marley, I didn't see you," she said. "Would you like a glass of tea?" What I really wanted was for my sister to come down and talk to me, but she was up in her new room, and even though I knew she'd heard the front door open when I came in, but I didn't want to sit in my room alone. And I guess I was a little thirsty, so I nodded. I sat down at the table while Betty Jean filled a tall glass with iced tea and poured in the tea. "Do you mind if I sit down a minute?" she asked as she put the tea down in front of me. The heat makes my ankles swell. Of course I didn't mind. Betty Jean was a hard worker. All the clothes were folded and put away, dinner was cooking in the oven, and the living room floor was clean. I'd be willing to eat off it. I was embarrassed she'd even asked me, like I was her boss or something, and gestured for her to go ahead. Betty Jean pulled out a chair and sat down. It was hot, and she used the flowered apron to wipe the sweat from her face. I wondered why she didn't pour herself a glass of tea, then remembered that there seemed to be an unspoken rule that she could cook our food but never taste it, kind of like the one about girls and math and satellites. It made me mad thinking about that, and before I knew it, I had jumped up and poured another glass of tea. Betty Jean looked surprised when I held it out to her, but she took it. Thank you, Marley. She drank half the glass in one long gulp, then wiped her mouth daintily and said, Did you have a nice day at school? I'm doing a presentation in history, I said, then sat down embarrassed. I'd never spoken to her before. Good for you, said Betty Jean. I counted prime numbers in my head until I realized she wasn't going to ask me anything else. We sat like that for a long time, silent, but not a bad silent, just quiet. When I was done with my tea, I snuck a look at Betty Jean. She was about my mother's age, with big brown eyes and high cheekbones. Her skin was dark and smooth, and at her temples was just a bit of gray. She was staring off into the distance, thinking of something else, but when she felt my gaze on her face, she looked over me and smiled. I smiled back. Turns out, Betty Jean wasn't just plain water after all. She had a twist of lime that was all her own. After dinner, I sat in bed trying to figure out what to do about JT and his homework. Sure, he always thanked me or told me I was a nice girl, but I'd expected more. He never brought me candy or asked me to go to the movies or did any of the things a boyfriend was supposed to do. Then again, he wasn't really my boyfriend. I was pretty sure you had to talk to have one of those. Also, I didn't suppose those Soviet scientists who had sent up Sputnik had gotten where they were by cheating. If I wanted to work on a top secret space project someday, I couldn't have any blemishes on my record. Not to mention that I knew cheating was just plain wrong. But every time I resolved to hand JT a blank piece of paper, I wondered if this would be the day he came to his senses and asked me out. I had decided to give him just a little more time when there was a knock at the door. Without waiting for me to answer, Judy poked her head into the room. You got a minute? I nodded. Judy held up a covered bird's cage. I heard Daddy say he hasn't had much time for Pretty Boy lately. That was Daddy's pet parakeet. He usually kept him in the living room. I kept my eyes on the parakeet. I was still too angry to look at Judy, too worried that if I started talking I might say something I couldn't take back. Do you want to keep him? In here with you? Judy asked. Daddy said it was okay. I shrugged. Judy set him down on the dresser. I didn't say anything. I'm sorry, Marley, she said. I've been so upset about not having school, not seeing my friends, and wondering how I'm going to get to college if I can't even start 11th grade that I haven't really been thinking about you. It was embarrassing. I was almost 13. I shouldn't need my older sister to fuss over me or tell me what to do, but I did. Without her, I was afraid I'd just get quieter and quieter till even Mother and Daddy didn't remember I was there. All of a sudden, Judy leaned over and gave me a hug. I tried not to melt into it, tried to stay stiff and cold, but my sister gives really good hugs. Pretty boy, the parakeet sang. Pretty boy. Come back, I begged, please. I can't, said Judy. It's not personal, Marley. I just need some more space. You'll get used to it. Maybe she was right. Maybe I would. But I didn't have to like it. Chapter 8. A New Friend. The next day at lunch, Liz showed up with a schedule. I've got it all worked out, she said. We have 3 weeks until our presentation. If we work Monday, Wednesday, and Friday after school, and Saturday afternoons too, I think we'll be ready. Maybe. I hope. Why are you two working so hard? Asked Sally when she heard about our plans. I was wondering the same thing myself. Judy told me Miss Taylor was an easy grader. We could probably wait until the weekend before we still get an A. Marley's going to talk, bragged Liz. Oh, yeah, that was why we couldn't wait. I kept trying to forget that part. If the bribe had been anything but a magic square math book, it would have been so easy to refuse. Oh, really? Said Sally, as if that was about as likely as me jumping off the diving board. I suddenly wanted to do it. Magic squares or no, just to prove her wrong. Liz elbowed me in the ribs. Tell her, she said. I am, I squeaked. Sally rolled her eyes. Ignore her, ordered Liz. Sometimes she could be as bossy as Sally herself. Now we just need to make a place for you to practice speaking aloud. The library's out, of course. It needs to be somewhere you feel comfortable, but where we don't have anyone else like a maid or another sibling hanging around. You don't have a treehouse, do you? I shook my head. Liz thought in silence for a moment. A few tables over, JT shoved a whole slice of orange into his mouth. His bangs fell into his eyes and he started jumping around like a monkey, but somehow he still managed to look cute. The zoo, I suggested. Perfect, said Liz. You can talk to the animals. Great, I thought glumly. Just call me Dr. Doolittle. We started the next afternoon in front of the gorillas. I watched the mother gorilla picking the bugs off of her baby for a good 5 minutes before Liz cleared her throat. Okay, said Liz. Now I've prepared a few questions to get you warmed up. I gave her a look. This was sounding pretty stupid. Come on, Marley, they're easy. Give it a shot. Fine. I crossed my arms and stared at her. What's your favorite color? Blue. Who's your favorite singer? Buddy Holly. I like him too. Did you see him sing Peggy Sue on Ed Sullivan? I nodded. They had been pretty neat. What's your favorite subject? Liz continued. Math. I knew that. And the point of all this is? To get you talking, said Liz. I hated to admit it, but her plan had worked. We just had a whole conversation. The next day we met, we moved on to the elephants. Liz had me read part of the notes I had written up. Even though Ruth, the elephant, was the only one listening, my hands were still trembling. The Quapaw families had lots of traditions, I mumbled. The Quapaw. Ruth stomped her foot. Go on, coaxed Liz. Fathers were really important to the Quapaw stomp. I paused again. Quapaw, said Liz. Stomp, stomp. Why is the elephant? Liz shrugged. Quapaw, I said. Ruth stomped her feet so fast it looked like she was dancing. Liz and I glanced at each other and burst out laughing. It was fun after that, singing to the seals and hollering to the herons. Liz always helped me warm up, like an opera singer, by asking me a few silly questions. Would you rather be a hippo or a rhino? Rhino. If you could only eat one food for the rest of your life, what would it be? Peanut butter. It's the night of the big dance. You're there with JT and I don't like JT, I said. You give him his homework every morning, Liz pointed out. Okay, so I did. It's the night of the dance, Liz went on. Would you rather have a pimple on your chin or your forehead? Forehead, of course, I said. I could wear my hair down and hide it. Great, said Liz. Now it's your turn. My turn to what? Ask me questions. Actually, I wanted to. We'd been meeting up for 2 weeks now, and she knew all sorts of random facts about me. I knew next to nothing about her, except that she was bossy and organized and actually kind of fun. But when I tried to think of something witty or funny to ask, my mind went blank. What's your favorite color? I finally said. Green, said Liz, like the grass. Who's your favorite singer? Elvis Presley. What's your favorite subject? English, said Liz, but my mother wishes it were math. Interesting. Part of me wanted to follow up there, but there was something else I was dying to know. Why are you helping me? Because I like to see Ruth dance when you say quapaw. This was hard for me. I'd always told her the truth, and she was turning it into a joke. Seriously. For the first time, Liz was silent. Behind her, the giraffes chewed their cud. I thought it might be hard, always being quiet, Liz said finally. I thought you needed a friend. She was right. I did. I needed a friend too, said Liz, and I suddenly knew what Liz was: a cup of warm milk with a dash of cinnamon. We stuck to the assignment for the rest of the afternoon, walking past the zebras and the flamingos, and finally ending up at my favorite place in front of the lions. There were two lions out that day, both females, playing together, jumping over a log, batting an old pumpkin with their paws. I'd never seen them so active. We watched them a long time. Sometimes I feel sorry for them, Liz said suddenly. Why? I asked. They look like they're having a great time. Yeah, she said, and I know they get their food and everything, and if they get sick, a vet gives them medicine, but don't you think they'd rather be chasing a zebra across the savannah? Probably, I agreed. I like to listen to them, Liz said. What? At night. I like to listen to the lions roar. Me too. I never thought anyone else did that. I wonder where she lived. I wonder if she'd ever invite me to her house. Should I invite her to mine? Wasn't that what friends did? When we first moved here, the roaring used to scare me, but now I find it. Liz paused. Comforting, I suggested. Yeah, she agreed. And for the first time, I understood what Judy was saying about finding someone who shared interests with you, someone you can sit quietly with. For the first time, I thought I might understand what it was like to have a real friend.